Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Annabelle Baldi from BioBuzz, and I'm very excited to have you guys all here for another one of our Career Catalyst sessions. So today's session is part of our general career navigation track. And as some of you know that have joined in on these sessions, I've been hosting these over the past year and a half, doing this program, but we're actually in the new year kind of transitioning it. So we'll be having different tracks. We have 4 different tracks, one of them being the general career navigation track, like I said, and this session is part of that. So those will be typically hosted now by Crystal Richards, who's awesome. And she's going to be stepping up, like I said, host them, having some guests. She today has a conflict, so I'll be stepping in and hosting again, and she'll be coming back next month for another great session. So stay tuned for that. But when I kind of talk about what we'll talk about today, so our focus today is pretty timely. It's on how AI is shaping biotech careers, and also kind of in the theme of being in the new year, what professionals need to know to stay relevant and competitive in 2026. So like I said, really looking at that, and Deepa's going to kind of walk us through some tutorial of like how to do that with AI. So it's going to be a really good session today. A little bit about Deepa Kumar, who's joining us, our guest today. She is the founder of Deepa Kumar Transformation Coaching. She's also a solutions consultant at OpenText, where she works with AI to help solve complex information challenges. And she's, like I said, going to be showing us today how AI can help support clear decision-making and help you navigate career growth with more confidence. So before we do dig into that, I do want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors for today's session. So we have Workforce Genetics. They've spent over 20 years connecting life science talent with high-performing teams, and they're now using AI to help venture-backed companies hire smarter and faster. So if you're looking at recruiting services, that's a great one to check out. It's our sister company. So go on to workforcegenetics.com and you can see that. Also want to thank Biotech for today's session. Biotech is a great upskilling resource. So they have lots of hands-on training programs. They've supported over 17,000 scientists. So like I said, if you're looking for upskilling, really great resource. Would definitely check them out at biotech.com. And also want to mention that today's session is part of the BioBuzz Talent Lab. So we're in the beta testing of that, but it's a great kind of hub for career growth, job opportunities, industry connections. So I would definitely join that. If you're not already on it, we'd love to have you join to kind of stay in the know about more resources like this. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to hand it over to Deepa.
All right, thank you. Just so you guys know, I am hoping this is a very interactive session, so I don't want this to be just me kind of reading off of slides. So I do have some questions and some, chances for you guys to interact. So please feel free to come off mute and do that. Or you can put things in the chat. Obviously, I can't see the chat, so I don't know if Annabelle or Dina, you could help me if there's anything in the chat. Please feel free to let me know.
Yeah.
All right, let's get started. Okay. All right. So just a little overview of what I want to cover today. We're just going to be talking about AI. Obviously, AI is everywhere, right? So this is not going to be a technical presentation by any means. Even though I do work with AI in the company that I'm working for right now, I'm not a technical expert by any means. I actually come from the biopharmaceutical manufacturing industry. That's where I was. I worked for GSK for many, many, many years. And then now I'm on the vendor side of things. So I actually happen to work for a software company in the sales team, very different than what I was doing before. But again, just to let you know that this is not technical, but I really do hope that this kind of helps us understand a little bit more how AI, can help in all of our jobs. So we're going to be talking about that. And, obviously I would love to hear your perspectives. Talking a little bit about changing expectations in the industry, or just in general, what companies are expecting of us as employees, with AI. Talking a little bit about improving AI skills. I'm going to focus very briefly on, how you can do that starting, as soon as today. Again, not very technical at all. We're going to go through writing a good prompt, and I do have an example of a prompt. Then I'll kind of show you the structure of the prompt, and then we will demo that prompt in ChatGPT, and let's hope that works. We all know that working in ChatGPT or Gemini or anything kind of on the fly, you never know what it's going to say, but hopefully with a good prompt, it'll give us some good results. Okay. So where and how is AI being used in the industry? I mean, really everywhere, right? And this is not an exhaustive list by any means. I just kind of threw some things on here, but I would love to hear, kind of from your perspective too. I happen to have a background in manufacturing and quality. I did work a little bit in R&D before that. And, I worked in MSAT doing tech transfers. I also was a Lean Six Sigma black belt doing process improvements and things like that. Worked very heavily in deviation investigations. And obviously when I was in that role, AI was not really a thing yet, not like it is today. So I can definitely see, in that realm, how AI can help, whether you're doing a process improvement, being able to collect a lot of data and analyze data and actually come up with, ways to improve a process, for example. Or maybe if you're working in deviation investigation analysis in your QA and you're managing deviations, I can certainly see how it could help you find trends and things like that. I happen to be on the vendor side of things. Like I said, I work for a software vendor. And one way that we use AI of many, we tend to have a lot of RFPs from potential customers when they're sending in, several questions, hundreds of questions, asking about our company, asking about our product, asking about our solutions, and seeing if it's a good fit for them. It used to be a very manual process to answer these RFPs. Now we have an AI solution that'll help us, and again, this is around, answering questions that people have been answering many, many times. So it's able to see trends and help you and get those RFPs out to customers faster. So the key here is, how do you do things faster? How do you do things more efficiently? So what I'd like to understand from you guys on the call, where do you work? What area or what function do you work in? And what has been your experience with AI? And I think the more we talk about it, this may give other people ideas on how they can use AI. So I'd love to open up the floor. So please feel free to come off and mute and just kind of tell us where you work in terms of your function and how you've used AI.
Hi, Deepa. This is Steve and Steve Hubert, and I'm an independent consultant. Can I ask a question now?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I feel somewhat handicapped using AI because all the information that we pass back and forth, like you're talking about when you get in proposals, they're all confidential and confidential. I don't know if you're going to address confidentiality later in the talk, then you can skip the question. But how do you handle issues like that? You can't go uploading confidential information into the cloud. That could cause it basically breaks your confidentiality agreements.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Steve, are you the same Steve that I worked with way back in the day, or are you a different Steve?
I am, and I've got fond memories. You're fantastic, and I'm glad to see that you're still contributing in the space. That's wonderful.
Good to see you. So a couple different ways to answer that question. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, I guess, working for a company that we do have a solution that does this. I know one of my coworkers is on the call. Taylor, you're on the call. I see you there too. One of the things that we do, so we have, I'm not, trying to, I'm not in my sales mode or anything, so don't worry. But, just to kind of think of one way that companies handle that, right? If you have an enterprise solution, so if you happen to have control documents that are sitting in a control document repository, as a lot of our documents are in the industry, or, it doesn't necessarily have to be GMP documents, but it could be, like you said, proprietary information. That's something that you don't want to expose to the cloud. One way to handle that, right? And it's not an easy answer, because you would have to, it could be an enterprise solution that your company has to get behind, is to have we happen to have a AI solution that sits within that, right? So it's when it calls, when you're asking it a prompt, it's not going to go outside and look at everything, on the web, and it's also not going to expose your information, whether it's yours or whether you have client information on there. It's not going to do that, right? Because it's really it uses something called RAG, and I'm not going to get into the technical details because, again, I don't exactly know how it works. But what it does, it only kind of prompts from the content that you have in that control repository. So that's one way a lot of our clients happen to do it, right? And that security obviously is a huge concern, whether it's security, proprietary information, or just data security in general. So that's the way that I would, answer that question. Now, if you're just putting things into ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, all bets are off, right? I would not recommend putting content that is proprietary on there, because then you have the risk that it's going to start training the model, which you do not want to do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if we're talking about how we deal with our clients, who happen to be all corporate clients in the same situation, that all of our clients are major companies, this is how they handle that. So does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah, it confirms what we thought,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate. I wish we could go directly into, the big AI models, but
Yeah.
as you said, you have to have a firewall because you want to keep your confidentiality agreements. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else? And where they work and how they've used AI, or any other questions when it comes to AI? How are you using AI in your jobs? Are people generally hesitant to do it because of confidentiality and privacy? Or are you comfortable using AI kind of when it comes to your job?
It looks like we have a question in queue. So, Visoy, if you want to get on and ask that, feel free.
Hi, Deepa.
Hi.
I work for GSK as well, and we have an enterprise solution for AI, and I've been using it mostly for summarizing journal articles or looking up how to do something at work, like how to put in a ticket for something. But I've also used it for writing those really tricky emails where somebody asks for sort of nebulous characteristics or guidance on something, and I've used the enterprise AI to, with a draft of something I wrote a few lines on, and then have AI polish it up and make it sound better. So instead of spending hours rewriting something trying to make it clear, I use AI to polish it up.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Alexandra.
Hi.
Yes, I just want to mention I'm currently in between roles, and I have used AI to help me with cover letters.
Oh,
and,
nice. Okay.
And I have found that it is very useful in conveying the message and making it sound so much better. However, I do caution, because a lot of the times I upload my resume and upload the job description, and then it writes a wonderful letter. However, a lot of the times it kind of submits information that is not correct and makes it sound better, like things that are not true that I've done. So I really recommend to obviously review the information and make sure that it's accurate. So I do feel that it helps. However, I'm not sure. And yes, the saving time is the number one thing, right? So instead of spending time trying to write something, it definitely provides a much more professional letter. but I just caution in terms of making sure the information is accurate. And I also question whether in the end it does help. And also, if companies are also using AI in, specifically in HR, and so you're going AI against AI, who's screening your information. And so it just kind of makes me wonder, does a human ever get to see, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, let me see if I have this coming up in the next slide. In terms of expectations, right? Old expectations versus new expectations, or newer kind of expectations going forward, I guess, right? Some of the things that you said, Alexander, is very true. And I think when it comes to, and that's one example when it comes to, writing cover letters, and even when you're writing official documents or anything like that, one thing that we always say is, and I think this is actually in the guidance, the FDA guidance too. If you look at their website on AI, one thing that they always say is keep, they call it human in the loop, right? So when you're writing any kind of content, right, you still have to, whether it's GXP, GMP content, or content that's not in a GMP, kind of situation, but it's still very true. You always need to have that somebody that's reviewing and approving your documents, right? And that person is still a person. That person cannot be the AI, right? Because you still have to be able to verify that what it's saying is indeed correct, that it's giving the right references, and you're not making process decisions solely based on AI, because then that could, you get into issues there with quality. But in terms of expectations, and this is coming from just kind of what I've seen from talking to our clients, but also kind of what's out there in, kind of literature. Now, and I do have some references that you can, read later on. But it's in terms of, again, time, right? Whether that's time to market, time to get product out the door, time to get, your R&D work done and being able to progress to the next, part of the value stream. It's taking the manual first draft out of it, right? And using generative AI to be able to say, okay, I have a first draft, now I'm going to polish that draft, rather than saying it's going to be taking, a few weeks to write a report, and then that report is going to have to go through multiple rounds of iterations of drafts, right? So I think when I was, in an MSAT role and I was, writing a lot of tech transfer reports, often our times would be, weeks to get a report done. Now, I haven't been in that type of a role in years, but I'm wondering if that's now changed to days, right? Because getting that first draft often is the thing that holds people up, right? I mean, writer's block is very real. And also you're waiting for data, and you're waiting to really get a good draft in place. It does take a lot of energy and effort, and being able to do that with AI. And so now you're coming in as the subject matter expert to see, okay, has it actually said, what it's writing is actually true? Is the data correct? Has it done, whatever, and then you can actually write that second, hopefully, and then you're done, right? But this is how I'm feeling the expectations in the industry are changing. So having said that, I'm curious to see what you guys have heard from, again, your companies, your leadership. Has there been any talk in terms of, what is the new expectation and how you will work with AI? Has there been any, I guess, timelines that have been reduced because people are expecting to use AI? I'm definitely interested to see what you guys have been dealing with on that realm. Feel free to, again, get off of mute or put it in the chat.
Hey, Deepa, this is Steve Hubert again.
Hey.
I've actually read company SOPs on the use of AI, and typically I typically work with smaller companies that really just have to use the native programs that are out there. They really don't have the time and the money to bring part of the system in-house to protect against confidentiality. So what I've seen are pretty strict prohibitions on using it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which is a shame. So that's just one data point for you.
So when you say prohibitions, they don't want you to use AI to generate content. Is that it? Because of confidentiality?
Yeah, because you know, in our business, the content is around, you know, new breakthrough science. You know,
Okay. Right.
you know, like the other day, I wanted to upload an amino acid sequence and see if it would aggregate in solution, but I couldn't do it because that sequence is confidential.
Confidential. Right.
And
Interesting.
it's really a pretty important GLP-1 sequence.
Yeah.
So the consequences are high. So it's very frustrating because what I used, you know, some of the tools that I used to use are hard to use now through AI.
Very interesting. Yeah. I think this is definitely one of those things where the AI, you hear everywhere that AI is everywhere and AI is going to take over everyone's jobs. But, you know, in reality, you know, this is the reality of it, right? Like you can't always use it. We don't always trust it yet. And we don't want to expose information out to the public because that's essentially what it does, unless you have a enterprise solution, which again is a pretty, if it's a small company, that's a pretty big ask for a small company to trust a, you know, a solution like that because it's a big investment for sure. Anyone else? Annabelle, Dina, how about you guys, just in your roles?
I was going to say acceptance of using AI. I feel like I definitely, when it first came out, I was in, I think it was like my senior year of college, and like a lot of my friends who are more, I'm personally, I would say, not the strongest writer, but they're very strong writers and definitely take pride in that. So I feel like I saw a lot of pushback about it in the start, but I've started to see people kind of like shift off to that and see the acceptance of using AI, especially as employers become more, I would say, bullish on it, seeing that acceptance growing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely we're definitely in a time of transition. And this kind of brings me to the next slide, which is around skills, right? And now think about this in terms of like, I know we're talking about AI when it comes to work, but you know, this obviously will help you really in any, you know, whether it's personal development or anything else. And I think Alexandra, you're saying that you're in between jobs and, you know, you're using it for, you know, writing cover letters, right? So I was thinking about, you know, what skills are, you know, things that are going to differentiate you from the next person using AI, because everyone's going to be using it, but some people use it a little bit better than others, right? And there's a skill to this. And I'm certainly not an expert, but this is definitely something that I have learned over time, and it's getting a little bit better the more I use it, which happens to be every day at this point. But one thing that I'm seeing, right, and this is again talking to clients that sort of like, we have corporate clients that again using our solutions and they want to use AI in this manner, and also, you know, just talking to people in general that are in leadership positions. And one thing that, you know, if you're using AI just as an advanced Google search, that's going to get you somewhere, but it's not going to get you, you know, a lot. It's gonna give you a lot of ambiguity still, because you can ask ChatGPT or Gemini really anything, it's gonna spit something out, right? And it may not be exactly what you're looking for. And I think, you know, you were saying that, Alexandria, that happened to you. So, but being able to, again, if you're able to ask the prompt in a certain way, and I will go through what a good prompt looks like later on this presentation, in a way that you're taking a lot of information and you're getting some clarity out of it, right? That's a skill that, you know, surprisingly not a lot of people have, or people have, you know, to varying degrees. So that's definitely a good skill set that I think AI can bring. Asking better questions before acting, right? And this again, I think somebody said, if you're in a situation and you don't quite understand what's being asked, and then you don't exactly know how to ask a question to clarify that, it kind of puts you in this like gray zone. One thing that I can, one example from my own career, like I said, I worked in R&D and pharmaceutical manufacturing for a very long time in my career. And now I have a job in pre-sales. I'm in a sales position at a software company. So if you can imagine, kind of making that shift in my career, I'm constantly surrounded by IT experts, and I don't always know what they're talking about because IT is not my background, right? But now we do happen to have an internal, AI solution that we can use that doesn't expose stuff to the internet. But there are a lot of times when I will put something into that AI and say, okay, this is what was talked about in this meeting. What are the key takeaways? Because again, a lot of it can be very technical. And before I can now go to somebody else to follow up, hey, what's the next step in this process, the sales process? It actually gives me some clarity before asking that question. So I don't come off as being, I don't know anything that you guys are talking about, and we don't know what the next steps are because I don't know what to ask you. I don't know what I don't know, right? Having AI as that sort of like companion, if you will, to help you clarify what you're going to ask before you ask it has been very useful for me. So again, that's something that can kind of help you in terms of a skill set. Connecting insights across functions, as we all know, I mean, all companies, I don't know one company that hasn't, kind of worked in the silo situation where people don't really talk to other people, like there's multiple projects or multiple initiatives going on and they don't always know that the other team is doing the same thing. There's a lot of miscommunication between different functions. And again, this is where AI can come and kind of give you that, I guess, a step ahead. You'll be a step ahead, right? And this again, and I'll give you an example from, again, my own situation, right? We work again with technical people, with salespeople, with people that are in very customer-facing roles and things like that. And a lot of times, with a large corporation like ours, we have multiple people that talk to customers, and we don't always know that we have different people from our organization talking to the same customers. We almost have to, the customer tells us. So this is another way that we can kind of say, oh, okay, we can kind of bring our people together, talk about, get AI to help us understand, where people are, working together, with this customer, gain insights from that, and then, smooth out the process going forward. And then explaining how decisions are made. A lot of times decisions are made, but you don't know why they're made. You don't always know the logic behind that, right? And again, getting AI to help you in these things is, again, a step ahead from just kind of going through the check. A lot of times people kind of go through a checklist of things that they need to do, and they don't always question why. And a lot of times it's because they don't know why, right? So even asking AI, why was that decision made, or why do you think that's going on, I think kind of gives you some insight. So these are sort of like, maybe not necessarily tactical skills, but just kind of like a mindset of how you can use AI to get a step ahead of the next person that's using AI. Because I mean, everyone's using it, but the more intentionality you have behind it, the better off you're going to be. So with that, anything else that you guys want to add to this? What skills you're seeing within your job that's becoming differentiators because of AI, or what has become better, I guess, the more you use AI. And again, it doesn't have to be anything that has to do with, oh, sorry, I'm getting a call. It doesn't have to do with, specifically confidentiality or anything like that. Right? Or even things that you're doing, on your own for personal development. Anything that you guys want to add to that?
Can I say something?
Sure.
So I am not personally involved in pathology, and diagnostics. But what I have seen now in several conferences is that AI is being used in pathology to analyze images. And so I think that has brought in or is bringing a lot of change to diagnostics and clinical trials. So that's one big area where AI seems to be changing and bringing big changes in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else? All right. Oh, Animal, you said simple data cleaning and organization.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of the things that I've been seeing, definitely what I enjoy about using it is just being able to go in and take, like, if I have like an Excel sheet or something like that, and being able to organize things right, or like information that you have, being able to put it in kind of an orderly fashion.
Yeah, for sure. Preeti, I think you came on camera. I don't know if you had anything to say.
Yeah, actually, I can just add to, what you and Alexandra were saying. I'm also in transitioning in between roles, and AI has been helpful, for drafting cover letters, as Alexandra said, but many times you have to tell AI what you want exactly in the cover letter. It will give you a first draft, but you have to yourself dig in a little bit and then tell that you want to include this particular information. And based on that, it will provide you the draft. And yeah, you have to actually keep modulating that, based on what your requirement is and what you feel is the best for your cover letter that you want to submit in the application. And also, like, I have been, I'm a regulatory affairs professional, and sometimes I use AI for, like, if I don't have much time and I want to see, what a new draft guidance has, I can summarize that. Or as someone else also said, for articles, summarization, you can use that too. And plus, based on the job description, I tell that this is my particular bullet points in the CV, for my generic CV, but the AI, this ChatGPT I will ask ChatGPT, that what exactly I can modulate in these bullet points, that makes me more ATS friendly, that ATS will catch those words, in those job descriptions, what I am incorporating as what I have done in my previous job roles. So yeah. But I totally agree that like, everyone has to be smart enough to see, that what ChatGPT has written, AI has written, and what you exactly want. So,
Yes,
and I
absolutely.
also know many companies are using, some regulatory intelligence softwares and all. So with that is actually a work of AI only, that AI is checking everything and telling you. But if you do that on ChatGPT, you don't get that accurate information. So you have to have a proper engine, to search for things depending on your needs.
So those regulatory tools that you mentioned, they have AI built into them. Is that what you?
Yeah, regulatory
Okay.
intelligence is AI built into it, right?
Got
So
it.
they
Okay.
have access to all the repositories, and from that they are extracting out the information you are requesting.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I think this leads into this next slide, as you had mentioned. When you are asking ChatGPT or any, Gemini or whatever, right? One of the public ones out there, you have to guide it in a way, right? Because if you're vague in your prompt, it's going to give you a fairly vague answer, and it might kind of go off on its own. And we've seen ChatGPT. You ask it one thing and it'll just keep spitting out things forever, right? You're just like, what are you trying to say? It has a mind of its own. So how do you improve asking AI? Because again, the way that we interact with it, the more intentionality we put into it, the better the response tends to be, right? So this is like a quick little, I guess, learning loop, if you will, just to kind of, offer you one way to, this is not the way, but this is kind of one thing that has helped me. It's, recognizing where you can, use an LLM, right? And I think some of the discussions that we've had today was just to get you some ideas on where you can use it. Now, I do also understand that there is some confidentiality. You can't always use it the way that you want to when it comes to uploading, information onto ChatGPT. If you do happen to have an enterprise solution, then that's a different story. But just in general, where can you use LLM? You can also, you don't have to put confidential information. You can, kind of redact yourself a little bit before you even put something on there. You don't have to, expose any clients or any proprietary information, and you can still get an idea of where you can use it, right? And some things that we've talked about just in general today has been, summarizing documents, taking things from other repositories, whether it's the FDA website or guidance documents or anything like that, and putting it in there and getting key takeaways, right? And seeing what it can show you in terms of trends or insights or something like that. And again, we talked about that from, manufacturing, from vendor, being in a clinical space, being in R&D, where are those areas, again, where you can use an LLM, right? And that's like, there's a little bit of self-awareness there. And I think the more we talk about it in these types of forums, or, when you're talking about it with your colleagues or other people, like, the more you realize, oh, I can use an LLM to do this, that's kind of where you get that self-awareness, right? It's not always, we're not at the point, it's still fairly new to us, I think. It's been around, for 3 years now. People are still trying to figure out how to best use it. And there's a lot of what they call AI slop out there, right? People are using it for weird things that don't bring a lot of value. So again, when it comes to career stuff and job and kind of what you're doing for a living, where can you use it that's really going to bring value? And then the prompt, actually engineering a prompt. And I will go through this in the next slide, or actually a couple slides, I think, after this. How do I ask the LLM in the right way? Because there is better ways to prompt, right? And there's ways to ask a prompt that's, again, like I said, you ask it a question, it'll spit out like 10 things, and maybe none of those things are really anything that you want. So we'll go through that today. And then, once you kind of go get that information generating, and again, if you're using that to generate a document, right? And I think many of you said here, when you're generating a document, you still have to have a human in the loop, at least when it comes to what we do for work, right? You need somebody to validate what the LLM is saying is actually true. We're not at the point that we can 100%, use the LLM and never have anybody check it. I think what we do, especially in a regulated industry, is there's a lot of risk there. But again, using that to generate, what are you generating? Is it SOPs? Is it cover letters, like you said? Is it reports? Is it protocols? Are you is AI helping you to create, design your experiment in some way, right? Or something like that. Are you using it to analyze data in some way, right? And then obviously you're having people, yourself or somebody else, check that. Evaluate, right? And again, that's part of that checking, what's wrong, what's missing. We still have, and again, depending on if you're using a public LLM or enterprise LLM, if you're using a public LLM, there are still, they call hallucinations, right? Things that'll just spit out and they're just plain wrong. So you can't really trust it. Even in enterprise LLMs, they don't tend to hallucinate as much, but they may not always pull up the references that you're looking for. There's still, things that may be missing, depending on what part of the value stream that you're in, that might add risk to your process if you don't have somebody checking, right? And then refining it. And so if you're kind of in a process where you're having to do this on a, constant basis, maybe you're reviewing documents, maybe you're reviewing SOPs or deviations, and that's something that you do every single day. How do you get better at that? Maybe the way that you prompt something gets better over time because you've learned a process. So this is kind of like improving your AI skills. Again, one of many, right? I mean, you can go take a course. There's so many courses out there. But if you don't want to do that, you can start, as soon as you're done with the session, go and try it out. So let me go through this piece, the prompt. Before that, though, I think I have one more slide and kind of like, okay, how working with AI, what it means for you, in 2026 and going forward, right? Like I said, use AI intentionally, not just when you're stuck, not just when you're kind of, querying it the way that you would query Google, right? It's not always something that you want to use ChatGPT or Gemini for. The more intentionality you put into it, the better a response you get, as we just talked about in the last slide. Adapting as work evolves. Now, again, like we've talked about today, some companies are a little bit more advanced than others. Some are still risk averse and they don't want you to use AI quite yet. So everybody is in a different part of that journey in terms of how we're adapting to AI. But adapting is part of that journey, right? We can't resist it. We know it's here, it's going to stay, and it's only going to get more pervasive in everything that we do. And not waiting for roles to be defined. Like a lot of companies are still trying to figure out how AI fits within their strategy and how roles are going to change. We do know at some point roles are going to change. Hopefully it won't get to a point that, robots are taking over and nobody has a job. I don't think that's going to happen, at least not anytime soon, but they are going to change. Roles are going to adapt. So, and a lot of times HR doesn't always know what that's going to look like, right? So it could be up to us to define that next role for us using AI. How can AI make something better? And maybe that role is not there yet, but maybe the opportunity is there for you to kind of speak up and say, okay, this is something that we can maybe create. And every company is different. I know some companies are a little bit more, difficult to do that, but other companies are not. But just think about that, right? Don't wait for them to come say, hey, here's a great role that uses AI, because they may not know. So I would kind of speak up if you have a great idea there. Combining, that scientific expertise that we all have, operational expertise, again, if you're working, in a more operations field, and again, with your own sound judgment. Again, like I said, we're not there yet that we can trust AI, kind of outright. I don't think we'll ever be there. I mean, my hope is that there's always going to be humans that have jobs, and we bring a certain flavor. We have experiences that the AI has never experienced before, right? What we feed it is what it's going to, throw back out at us. So having that, expertise, experience, and the knowledge behind how something works, whether it's a process or something a lot more technical, how a molecule works and what it, how it impacts, the quality of the product at the very end. That's a very human thing still. And I think using that with conjunction with AI is going to just make us better. And then, being trusted to make complex cross-functional situations. Now, again, as human beings, like some people are better than this than other people, right? But having AI as that partner, and that brings us to that last bullet point, working alongside AI, right? Almost like using AI as your kind of a coworker, on its own. It is, AI is evolving to be a little bit more autonomous. Like I said, at some point, we're going to have, probably AI coworkers and AI buddies that will, that we may be partnered with. And instead of being afraid of that AI taking our jobs, how can we work with that AI so that we are making ourselves that much more, stronger in our role? So these are just kind of things to think about as you're, thinking about your careers with AI being, in the loop. So going to writing a prompt, right? So this is going to be a little bit meta because the way that I wrote this prompt is I wanted to write a goal, right, in order for me to upskill on AI. Because again, this is something that you may have in your own goal setting, whether it's for your own personal goals or something to do with, your goals at work, your development goals at work, right? So as you'll see here, there are three kind of distinct, sections for this prompt. So the first one, I'm asking it to be my AI coach. You know, I'm a non-technical professional. Like, I don't know anything about IT or anything. I'm a professional, but I'm working in a regulated industry and I want to understand how to upskill in AI. So asking it to be my coach. Yeah, you're giving it a role. Okay. So you assign a role to the AI. And this is generally good practice if you want to make the best use of a prompt, right? The second is you're kind of giving it some guidance in how you want to do. Like I said, somebody had said here, you know, I think you said, Preeti, like when you asked it to, you had to tell it kind of what to do, right? In terms of the cover letter. Otherwise, it's just going to spit out a whole bunch of things that you don't need, that's not relevant. So in this case, I'm saying I want to intentionally improve how I use AI tools, you know, like chatbots and generative AI in my day-to-day work without advanced technical skills. You know, I'm not about to go and take a course in AI. I don't want to learn how to code or anything like that. You know, I got a day job, but I want to get better at AI. That's kind of the point here. But I'm also asking it, okay, just to be a little bit more intentional, you know, ask me no more than 3 focused questions to understand my role, constraints, and how I currently use AI, okay? So that's like you're giving it some guidance there. And the very last piece of this is all around actions, right? So you're asking it to propose a SMART goal, you know, to improve your AI skills over the next, you know, couple months. Recommend 1 or 2 practical ways that I can start using AI in my real workflow. That's based on the things that I had told it. And then flag 1 common mistake to avoid and suggest a concrete action. So, you know, you're anchoring the prompt with some actions. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take this prompt and I guess I should stop sharing this tab and share the other one, right, Annabelle? Let me do that really quick. Stop sharing. I'm going to share my ChatGPT tab with you guys because I have put that in here. All right, let me know if you can see my screen.
No.
Yeah. Okay, can see it now. Perfect.
All right. So I just copied and pasted into ChatGPT. I'm not logged into my account, but I'm just using the non-logged in free version. So there's my prompt. Let me go ahead and hit it and let's pray that it works because you never know what's going to happen real time with AI, but let's see. All right, so it goes and says, it's going to ask me 3 questions because I told it, you know, ask me a couple questions just to kind of make sure that it's understanding me, right? So it wants to know my role, my industry, my constraints. So I'll just say I'm a QA operations professional in a biofarm manufacturing facility. I think most people will relate to that. And then 2, so constraints, what matters to me most right now? Obviously, I'm just going to pick 1. Otherwise, it's going to go on forever. Data privacy is my biggest thing, right? I'll just say that. Current use of AI. I use it to help me summarize deviation. But I'm not sure if I'm doing it correctly. All right, so of course you can get more specific, but I'm gonna give it that and see what it spits out. There you go, sorry about that, okay. So it's building my SMART goal. So within the next 45 days, I will consistently use AI 2 to 3 times a week, create first pass summaries of deviations and investigation records using de-identified inputs. I think when they say de-identified inputs, this is assuming you're using a public AI and you don't want to put you know, any private stuff on there. But, you know, again, if you have a if you have a enterprise solution, maybe not so much of an issue here. And I will review and correct every output so that the final summary meets QA standards without increasing review time. Okay. And it's also giving you some, kind of how-tos, right? Like gives you some rules, gives you some ways to de-identify. So if you're using a public LLM, it's saying, don't put product names, just say product A, don't put batch numbers, write batch X, so on and so forth. So there's ways that you could probably do it if you want to. And again, follow your company's regulations here and policies. But there is, if you wanted to do that, you can, right? And then it gives you an idea of how to constrain that prompt even more, right? If there's like a description or where and when. So all this to say, right, I'm not going to go through the details here, but the whole point of this was, as somebody that sits in a QA role, wanting to upskill on AI, I'm not really sure, maybe you're sitting here thinking, I don't really know how to do that in a way that's, not, kind of, now, how do I even do this? Where do I start? You can ask the AI how to start, right? And so in this case, if you're not sure how to build a goal for yourself, maybe this is something that you're putting in your development, part of your development goals. You're not quite sure how to make it a SMART goal and make it something that is realistic, for you to actually achieve over the next, however many days. Ask the LLM how to do that, and it'll give you an idea, right? And then you can follow this, or you can refine it, right? Maybe it's something that you can just get an idea of. So I just wanted to give you that demo to say, here's a way to write a intentional prompt with a lot of detail, and it gives you, it's not spitting out a whole bunch of garbage. It's actually answering the questions that you wanted to answer, right? And it's giving you a very specific goal that you can now write and then track. So those are, that's what I had for today. Any questions on that or anything in terms of, I guess this is a good kind of way to segue into Q&A.